The long, miserable winter is over. Mud season is starting to be on its way out. And that means it is far too early dry fly season, which is one of my absolute favorite times of year. I usually, at this point in the season, am hitting every single water every time I go out with a dry dropper rig, and there is no better dry pattern, I believe, than this spin on the classic Elk Hair Caddis pattern, which I'm going to call the Blowtorch X Caddis. So inspired by Devin Olson's Blowtorch jig, this fairly classic Elk Hair Caddis pattern just has a very high visibility fluorescent orange shuck. I don't know why it works, but it absolutely does. And let me show you how to tie it up. So there are three main features of this fly that we like to focus on when tying. There is the standard tent shape elk hair wing, which covers roughly 1.5 lengths of the hook shank or the body of the fly. There's also going to be this dubbed underbody, dubbed lightly, but with the ability to then tease out some of the forward fibers so that it looks like those emergent struggling legs. And then toward the back, and this is a page right out of Devin Olson's Blowtorch, we're going to have a high vis trailing shuck. Now, this is a slight variant on the X Caddis, a variant that, again, takes from Olson's high visibility Blowtorch jig nymph design. And this works incredibly well in the early spring when caddis are starting to become a little bit more active, and this works all the way through summer into the fall. Although some of the variations in the dubbed underbody start to work a little bit better or worse throughout the year. So while we tie this with a normal, just standard hairline dubbin, hare's ear color, we also like to tie this in a nice olive color, and then also in the rust color from hairline dubbin as well. And those three, in addition to maybe a darker hare's ear or a peacock underbelly, seem to be all that we need throughout the year. So let's go ahead and tie this up. So we're going to start with a Fulling Mill FM 1180 all-purpose light bronze in size 16. We also tie these up to size 12, although it's very rare, and that tends to be for the larger rivers. We'll go ahead and crush our barb before we get it secured in the vise. And then we're off and running. For thread, we're going to be using just a tan Danville and 70 denier. We're going to go ahead and start this a little bit back from the hook eye, maybe one hook eye's length back. And this is going to be in preparation for having all of the elk hair stacked toward the front. It's going to bunch up, it's going to be a little bit harder to tie the closer you get to that hook eye. So we're going to try to be cognizant of that. We'll wrap this back until about the hook point, and then we'll trim off our excess thread. And next we're going to grab some high-vis orange poly yarn. We just need a very, very slight amount. So I cut about that length off, and then I will take this and halve the amount of fibers that I'm going to use. So that looks about right. So there can be some variation in the shuck length depending on what works best for you or your artistic preferences. I tend to like something that's a little bit shorter but flares out quite a bit. It resembles a little bit more of the blowtorch archetype, and it works well for me. So we'll keep it a little bit on the shorter side right there. Go ahead and catch this in, secure it going back. We're actually going to put a couple wraps under as well to try to keep it propped up. This is just going to help with some of that flaring that I like, because you can kind of take your finger, push in, and you can umbrella it in a really pleasing way. Go ahead and trim up some of those fibers so they're a little bit more consistent. There we go. Trim off some of the front fibers, again, to try to make sure we're not crowding the head unnecessarily. And then we'll wrap our way back up to where we began. So again, we're using just a normal hare's ear dubbing. We're going to take a very slight pinch, but you'll notice that I left my thread at the front and not at the back as you might expect, and I'll show you why momentarily. So we'll take just a slight amount of dubbing. We'll create a thin noodle. And if you're going to have any bias in the taper of this dubbing noodle, you should make it a little thicker toward the front and a little thinner toward the back. And the thickness in the front is going to be so that before we tie in the elk hair, we can tease out some of those fibers to create an impression of legs. But we'll have it just a little bit thicker, as you can see there. We'll go ahead and begin to wrap this. Kind of got a little too thick for me, so I'm just gonna pay a little more attention here. Thin it out as I go back. And then you can see toward the back, it's a little bit fluffy. We have a nice dubbing laid down. But the reason I wrapped from the front to the back is so that I have bare thread to now re-wrap and tighten up some of that body from the back to the front. And this is just kind of my own idiosyncrasy. I like to be able to better control exactly how much of that dubbing is going to be able to come loose at any time. And also, I think maybe this gives a little bit more of a segmented look to the fly without having to add more bulk in the form of copper wire or tinsel or something like that. It's just a little bit more convenient way for me of trying to achieve most of the look I'm going for. So at this point, we're actually going to clean up the head just a little bit, move our thread all the way to the front, turn the fly over, and grab our dubbing brush. So it's very possible to do this step at the end of the fly tie. However, I also find that I tend to pull out and break some of the elk hair fibers when I'm trying to dub out the under dubbing. And obviously that's not what you want. You don't want your dubbing, or you don't want your elk hair to break. So I like to just do it at this stage. We're just gonna go focus on just that top, maybe half, and just get some of those fibers getting teased out. You can see just there. That's about perfect for me. So now we'll come back down. I'm gonna lick my fingers and draw back some of that dubbing so that it's out of the way. We'll pull back to the front of that dubbing, again, about a hook eye, maybe back, maybe a little bit more, just to give myself a little extra room. And now we're gonna grab our elk hair. So there are a lot of different preferences around this as well. I find that a little bit sparser tends to fish better for me, but I also find that the more I fish any of these flies, the sparser it naturally gets. When fish bite it, when it gets caught in a tree or bush behind me, whipping through the air, whatever it's going to be. So you can start a little sparser if you would like, or you can go a little thicker and then expect that that fly is just gonna get thinner throughout its life. And it's hard to describe, but I usually start with this much. Again, this is gonna be kind of to your feel. And as you're tying a few of these up for yourself, I think you'll also develop a preference around how many fibers you want to use based on how easy it is for you to tie it in. When I was first learning the Elk Hair Caddis patterns, the hardest thing for me to do was understand how much elk hair or deer hair I needed to use for the wings. And I finally learned that the right answer was however much I'm capable of tying in at one point. So we'll go ahead, we'll take our pinch of elk hair. I have cleaned out some of the underbody fuzz just by gripping it at the halfway point very firmly, and then with a lighter pressure in my offhand, just tugging at some of those lower fibers to get the fuzz out. So if you would like, you can tie it in with a little bit of irregularity. I think it looks pretty great. The more classic thing to do is to use a hair stacker and align those ends so that it's a nice and neat tent. So we'll go ahead, we'll use our stacker. And there you can see we have a very neat back end. Now, the only thing I would say is that when you look at a caddis, it actually has shorter, it has kind of a back curve to it. So it's not, you know, this nice straight line at the back. The most important thing to remember though is that no fish is going to be viewing this fly from above. They only care about what the profile below looks like. And for that, it does not really matter how you stack your hair. So we'll go ahead, we'll measure this out with our right hand. We'll transfer to our other hand. And then we're going to make sure that we're spinning our thread here. This is a really important step. It makes it much, much easier to wrap over loosely to make sure that you are capturing that elk hair where you want it. And then with 2 loose wraps, the third is gonna start getting a little tighter, and that's when you're gonna start to see some of that hair splay. There you go. And so you might be saying, this looks terrible. How the heck do you finish this off? And honestly, the first few times I did this, I completely agreed with you. This seemed like an insane way to tie a fly, but I promise you with a little bit of practice, spun hair becomes easier to work with. It's all about the tension and it's about the patience. If you try to rush this process, you're never going to be happy. So now that it is spun in, we're going to go ahead, put a couple more wraps on it. We're going to pull up as much of this deer hair as possible. And the best way I found for that is to actually get your thumbnail on the front end, find that hook eye, and hook your nail around it, pulling that back to free up the eye. And from here, you can start to build a little bit of almost a front end thread dam there. Now you're gonna catch some of these fibers. Again, patience is the key here. This is a very frustrating, potentially frustrating material to work with. The kinder you are to yourself, the easier this is gonna become. There we go. So just like so. And now that that's a little bit more out of the way, the whip finish becomes much, much easier as well. So again, draw it back until you're happy with it. I hooked a couple little fibers in there, so I'm just gonna continue to crank these back. That looks like plenty of space to me. So I'll go ahead, I'll get my whip finish tool. I'll go ahead and set this up. Once you have it hooked, you're gonna draw back. And again, be patient. Manipulate it as much as you need. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do a 5 turn. Snug that down, and then we'll clip it off close. Okay, and if you've made it this far, you're doing great. It looks a little silly. It looks mostly like deer hair, and that's the beautiful thing about deer hair, is it is meant to be shaped. So some of those threads, or some of those fibers I should say, kind of look like they've crept down a little bit despite what felt like pretty good wraps, and this is, again, totally okay. One of the positives, one of the benefits I should say, of using a few more elk hairs rather than I might otherwise, right? So if we're going for a sparse look using a little bit extra, is that you can be a little less exacting with your tie. So what we're gonna do is, after we clean up some of this head, we're gonna come in and clean up some of the fibers that are under the hook shank. So from this though, it's pretty easy. You can just capture some of those longer fibers. You can put your scissors behind them, pull those scissors forward, and just start cleaning up that head. Now the only thing to pay attention to here is that you don't accidentally get some of the fibers that you really want, or even worse, sneak your scissors down too much and clip some of the, and I've done this before, clip some of the thread that is holding it in place. But for there, just a nice clean 45-degree snip from the hook eye and back does most of the job. So keep trimming and cleaning up to your liking. And that right there is honestly good enough for most fish. But you can see on the underside, we do have those hairs that are taking up some of the bottom, and I want this fly to be able to lay on the water a little flatter so that that tail end and the high visibility shuck is more visible. So I'm gonna come in and I'm just going to trim up some of those side fibers. And there we go. So now we have our Blowtorch X Caddis. You can see that it has a really nice top wing to it that's roughly 1.5 at its thickest fiber part of the hook shank. It has the high visibility back end, again, taken from Devin Olson's Blowtorch design. And it has a nicely dubbed soft underbody, which we teased out and maybe can do a little bit more of here just to emphasize. Teased out some of that nice underdubbing to give the impression of legs. And that is our Blowtorch X Caddis. If you like this pattern and want to see some of the other guide patterns that we tie here in New England, subscribe to our channel and check out this video. And we will see you next time.